The air smelled of smoke and metal. The small outpost near the ridge was half destroyed, its walls broken by fire from plasma rifles. Lieutenant Marcus Hale moved slowly through the ruins, his rifle raised and his eyes sharp. His squad spread, out behind him, boots crunching against scattered stone. The war between humans and the Kierans had been going on for years. Both sides had learned to hate the other. But for Marcus, the war was not about hate. It was about survival. Orders told him to clear the sector, but deep inside, Marcus only wanted the fighting to end. He motioned with his hand, signaling 2 of his soldiers to check the left corridor. He moved right, stepping over broken beams. The silence felt heavy. Somewhere nearby, he thought he heard a faint sound. Not the growl of soldiers, not the hum of weapons, but something softer. It was like a whimper. Marcus paused. He lifted his hand, stopping the squad. "Stay sharp," he whispered. The sound came again, a muffled cry, weak but steady. Carefully, Marcus followed it, his heart tightening in his chest. He knew that sound. It was not the cry of a grown fighter. It was the cry of a child. He pushed past a broken doorframe and stepped into a small chamber. There, in the corner, half hidden under debris, was a Kieran child. The boy's skin glimmered faintly with pale. Scales in his large dark eyes shimmered with fear. He couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 in human years. The boy pressed himself back against the wall, trembling as Marcus lowered his weapon. For a moment, Marcus only stood there, staring. This was the enemy. This was the race that had burned human colonies, destroyed cities, and taken lives. His orders were clear. Enemies were to be detained or eliminated. But this was no soldier. This was a child, helpless, covered in dust and scratches. Marcus slowly lowered his rifle until it hung at his side. "It's okay," he said softly, though he knew the child likely didn't understand his words. "I'm not going to hurt you." The boy whimpered again, curling tighter. Marcus took a slow step forward. He wanted to show the boy that he meant no harm. But before he could move closer, the sound of heavy boots filled the room. From the far entrance, 3 Kieran raiders stormed. Their armor was scarred, their weapons crude but deadly. They were not soldiers from Soraya's peaceful village. These were outlaws, fighters who served only themselves. Their eyes locked on Marcus, then shifted to the child. One of them hissed a laugh. "You human," the raider growled in broken. "Standard. Step away, the boy is ours." Marcus froze. He understood in that moment. The raiders were not here to protect the child. They had cornered him, and from the cruel look in their eyes, they intended to use him as punishment, perhaps because of his family or tribe. The boy let out a terrified cry. Instinct surged through Marcus. He stepped forward, placing himself between the raiders and the child. "No," Marcus said firmly. The raiders snarled. "You protect him? Foolish human. Then you take his pain." Before Marcus could react, the first raider slammed the butt of his rifle into Marcus's chest. The blow knocked him back, stealing his breath. But he did not fall. He spread his arms, shielding the boy behind him. The second raider struck him across the face. Stars burst behind Marcus's eyes. But he stayed standing. His lips bled. His cheek burned, but he would not step aside. The child whimpered louder, clutching Marcus's leg. The sound gave Marcus strength. The raiders circled him, striking again and again. A fist to his ribs, a knee to his stomach. The third raider slammed him against the wall, making his bones rattle. Marcus gasped, his body screaming in pain, but he did not fight back. To fight would be to risk the child. "You will break, human," one of them snarled. Marcus coughed blood, but his voice stayed steady. "Not before you go through me." The beating grew worse. He felt something crack in his side. Maybe a rib. His arms were heavy, his vision blurred. Yet he held his ground, every breath reminding him of his choice. He thought of Earth, of stories his father once told him about protecting the weak, about courage not being the absence of fear, but the strength to stand anyway. Finally, the squad arrived. Shouts filled the chamber as human soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. The raiders hissed and fled through the far passage, leaving Marcus barely standing. Sergeant Lewis rushed to his side. "Lieutenant, are you out of your mind? You could have been killed." Marcus staggered, barely able to keep his balance. The boy still clung to him, small arms wrapped around his leg. Lewis stared at the child in disbelief. "That's an alien. Sir, why did you protect him?" Marcus looked down at the boy, then back at his squad. His voice was weak but firm. "Because he's just a kid." The words hung heavy in the smoky air. Some of the soldiers looked shocked. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Protecting a human child was one thing, but an enemy child? It was something they could not understand. As they pulled Marcus out of the ruined chamber, the boy refused to let go. His small hand gripped Marcus's torn uniform with desperate strength. Marcus didn't push him away. He carried the boy in his arms, despite his injuries. The squad moved back toward their transport. Whispers spread among the soldiers. Some called it foolish, some called it noble. But Marcus did not care. He had seen innocence in the middle of war, and he had chosen to protect it. The transport doors closed. The boy sat beside him, still trembling. Marcus leaned back, his body aching, his vision dimming. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the boy's wide eyes staring at him, filled not with fear anymore, but with something different. It was trust. Marcus woke hours later in the medical bay. His ribs were wrapped, his face bandaged. The pain was sharp but familiar. He had taken worse in battle, but this time was different. This time he had not fought for his life or his squad. He had fought for a child who should never have been in the middle of war. The boy was there, sitting quietly in a chair beside his bed. A guard kept watch nearby, unsure what to do with the alien child. But the boy stayed close, refusing food, refusing rest, until he was sure Marcus was alive. Marcus turned his head, his voice low. "You're safe now." The boy didn't answer, in words. He only reached out, placing his small hand on Marcus's arm. It was enough. Outside the bay, the base was buzzing. Command wanted answers. Soldiers gossiped about their lieutenant's strange act. Some respected him more. Others said he was losing sight of the war, but Marcus did not care about the whispers. He had made his choice. And though he did not know it yet, that choice would change everything, not just for him, not just for the child, but for the entire war. Because somewhere across the battlefield in a Karen village, a mother named Soraya would soon learn what a human soldier had done for her son. And nothing would ever be the same. The Karen village lay in the valley beyond the mountains, where the air was thick with the smell of growing herbs and the sound of flowing streams. The homes were built from stone and crystal, glowing softly in the twilight. It was a place of peace, far from the battlefront. Yet even here the war had left scars. Soraya walked among her people, her robes trailing across the smooth stone path. She was not only a healer, but also a respected voice in her community. Her hands had saved countless lives, human and Karen alike, when wounded prisoners passed through her care. Though her heart longed for peace, she carried herself with the firm grace of one who had seen much suffering. Her son, Kale, had been missing for 2 days. Raiders had struck during a supply run, scattering the group. When Soraya learned he was gone, she felt as if her heart had been torn from her chest. She searched every path, called every name, prayed to every ancestor, yet no answer came. Then a message arrived. Human soldiers had found a Karen child. The child was alive, though shaken. Soraya's heart leapt. She traveled under a flag of truce, escorted by village guards, to the human outpost where her son was kept. The human base was cold and metallic, filled with sharp angles and humming machines. Soldiers stood watch at every corner. Soraya entered carefully, her hands folded before her, her golden eyes calm but burning inside. In the medical wing, she saw him, Kyle, her son. He rushed forward the moment he saw her, small arms wrapping around her waist. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt and embraced him, holding him close. "My child," she whispered in her native tongue. "I thought I had lost you." Kale trembled against her. "Mother, he saved me." Soraya pulled back slightly, frowning. Who? The boy pointed. On the nearby bed lay a human soldier, covered in bandages. His face was bruised, his chest tightly wrapped, but his eyes were open. He was watching quietly. Soraya rose slowly, studying him. She had heard stories of human cruelty, of soldiers who destroyed without thought. Yet this man, this broken soldier, had shielded her son with his own body. You, she said softly, her voice carrying both wonder and confusion. You saved him. Marcus Hale shifted, wincing as pain moved through his ribs. He's just a kid, he replied. His voice was rough, but the words were steady. Didn't matter that he wasn't human. Soraya tilted her head. Among her people, such mercy toward an enemy was rare. Mercy was reserved for kin, not for those across the battlefield. She stepped closer. You took the blows meant for him, she said. Marcus gave a faint shrug, though the motion made him groan. Someone had to. Kyle tugged at her hand. He stood in front of them, Mother. He didn't move. They hurt him instead of me. Soraya's eyes softened as she looked at her son, then back at Marcus. This was no small act. To take pain for another was to take their fate into yourself. It was a bond her people respected deeply, though they rarely extended it outside their kind. She placed a hand on her chest, bowing her head slightly. I am Soraya, healer of the Karen people. I owe you a debt that cannot be measured. Marcus gave a tired smile. No debt. Just glad he's safe. But Soraya knew better. In her culture, debts of life were sacred. To ignore such a bond was unthinkable. Word of the soldier's act spread quickly. Some humans whispered that Lieutenant Hale had gone soft, protecting an alien child instead of finishing the mission. They said he risked the squad and brought dishonor to his uniform. Others argued he had shown rare courage, the kind of courage humanity claimed as its strength. Among the Karens, the tale was even stranger. Some laughed in disbelief. Others claimed it was a trick. But whispers began, whispers of a human who had taken suffering for a Karen child. For many, it was unthinkable. For some, it was hope. Soraya visited the human base again 2 days later. She carried a small case of crystal vials filled with medicine her people used to mend bones and heal bruises. The human doctors eyed her warily, but she walked with confidence to Marcus's bed. You should not still be in pain, she said firmly. Our methods heal faster. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Your people heal humans? Soraya knelt beside him, her hands moving with practiced skill as she mixed the glowing liquid and pressed it to his ribs. A warmth spread through him, easing the stabbing ache. We heal all who suffer, she replied softly. But I have another reason. Marcus looked at her curious. What reason? Her golden eyes met his. Because you saved my son, and because I must understand why. Marcus chuckled faintly, though it hurt his chest. Why? Seems simple. A kid's a kid. Doesn't matter if he's yours or mine. War shouldn't touch them. Soraya's lips parted slightly. The simplicity of his words struck her. In her culture, loyalty and compassion were tied to bloodlines, to tribe and kin. For this human, compassion seemed to stretch beyond those lines. She studied him for a long moment. Your people, they are strange, he smiled. Yeah. I hear that a lot. Over the next week, Soraya visited often. Sometimes she came with medicine. Sometimes she brought Kale, who always ran to Marcus and sat by his side, listening to his stories of Earth. Other times she came simply to speak. Marcus told her about his home world, about cities of glass and steel, about oceans that stretched farther than sight. He told her of the books he read as a boy, stories of knights and guardians who protected the innocent. Soraya shared her own tales, of the Karen bond between mother and child, of the songs sung during healing rituals, of the stars her people charted long before they met humans. At first their conversations were careful, like two walkers on thin ice. But slowly, trust grew. Marcus began to see not an enemy, but a woman of wisdom and courage. Saraya began to see not a soldier of war, but a man of compassion. Yet outside the medical wing, the world did not change so easily. Human commanders questioned Marcus's loyalty. "You're fraternizing with the enemy," they warned. This could weaken morale. Among the Karens, Saraya faced whispers. "You lower yourself before a human," some said. "You risk shaming your family." Still, she returned. Still, she spoke with him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Saraya stood by Marcus's bed while Kale slept in a chair beside them. "You have put yourself in danger," she said softly. "Not from raiders, but from your own people." Marcus looked at her, his face serious. "Yeah, I know. Some of them think I'm a fool. Some think I betrayed the uniform. And yet you do not regret it?" He shook his head. "Not for a second." Her gaze lingered on him, searching his face. There was pain there, and exhaustion. But there was also a light. Something steady, unyielding. "You are different from what I believed of humans," she admitted. "You confuse me." Marcus smiled faintly. "Guess I confuse myself sometimes too." For the first time in many years, Saraya felt something stir inside her. It was not only gratitude. It was not only curiosity. It was something deeper. Something she could not yet name. She looked at her son, sleeping peacefully. He was alive because of this human. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her life had changed the moment Marcus chose to stand in front of him. The war outside raged on. Battles were fought, borders shifted, and hatred remained strong. But inside that small medical chamber, something unexpected was growing. Something fragile. Something dangerous. Yet something full of possibility. Saraya left that night with Kale's hand in hers, but her mind was restless. She thought of Marcus Hale, the human soldier who had taken the beating for her son, and though she tried to tell herself otherwise, she knew the truth. She wanted to see him again. The days after Saraya's visits stretched into weeks. The medical bay became less of a place for treatment and more of a quiet corner where two different worlds touched. Marcus healed slowly, his ribs knitting together with the help of both human care and Karen medicine. But the deeper healing was not in his body. It was in the silence broken by conversations with Saraya. Kyle often sat between them, listening with wide eyes as Marcus spoke of Earth. He told the boy about the oceans, waves crashing like thunder, and the forests filled with endless green. Kale would laugh and ask questions, tugging at his mother's hand, begging for Marcus to describe more. Saraya, though quiet, listened too. But outside the bay, unease grew. The human base was not blind. Soldiers whispered when Saraya entered. Some sneered. Others watched with curiosity, as if expecting betrayal. "Lieutenant Hale," one officer said during a private meeting, "your actions are unconventional. Protecting an alien child is one thing, but this constant interaction with his mother, it sends the wrong message." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "With respect, sir, she's a healer. She hasn't harmed anyone. She saved my life with her medicine." "That may be true," the officer replied. "But appearances matter. Morale matters. You're making soldiers question your loyalty." Marcus clenched his fists under the table. Loyalty. Was it disloyal to care for an innocent child? Was it betrayal to speak with someone who wanted peace as much as he did? When the meeting ended, he walked back to the bay with heavy steps. He knew his path was not safe, but he could not turn back now. On the Karen side, Saraya faced her own troubles. When she returned to her village after visiting Marcus, whispers followed her. "You go to the humans too often," one elder warned. "People see and they talk." Saraya bowed her head respectfully. "I go because I must. The human saved my son. I cannot ignore this bond." The elder frowned. "Bonds are meant for kin, not enemies. If you are not careful, your people will question your judgment." Saraya left the council chamber with a calm face, but inside her thoughts were restless. Was she wrong to visit Marcus? Was she wrong to bring Kale near him? And yet, when she remembered Marcus standing bloodied but unbroken in front of her son, her doubts melted away. One evening, when the base was quiet and Kale had fallen asleep in a chair beside Marcus's bed, Saraya and Marcus spoke in low voices. "Your people doubt you," she said softly. Marcus gave a humorless smile. "And yours doubt you." "Yes," she admitted. "They think I lower myself, that I dishonor them." "Then we're both in trouble," Marcus said with a small laugh. For a moment silence stretched between them. Then Saraya asked, "Why risk so much? Why endure pain for a child not your own?" Marcus's gaze turned distant. "Because I've seen enough of war. Too many children get caught in the middle. On Earth we tell stories about heroes who protect the weak. I'm no hero, but if I can live by that even once, then maybe it means something." Saraya studied him carefully. His words were simple, but his eyes held weight. There was no trick. In his tone, no hidden plan. Just truth. "You say you are not a hero," she said quietly. "But to Kale, you are more than that. To him you are proof that not all humans are monsters." Marcus glanced at the boy sleeping peacefully. A faint smile touched his lips. "He's tougher than me. Took everything and still keeps smiling." Saraya's chest tightened. Gratitude was one thing, respect was another, but this feeling was different, deeper. She tried to push it aside, but it remained, stubborn and warm. Rumors grew stronger. Some human soldiers muttered that Marcus had gone native. They said he cared more for the enemy than his own kind. A few even suggested he should be reassigned. Marcus ignored them, though it ate at him. Among the Kirans, Saraya's reputation began to crack. Younger warriors asked why she wasted time with a human. Mothers whispered when she passed, pulling their children close. Still, she walked to the base, head high, Kale's hand in hers. Kale was the bridge neither side wanted, yet neither side could ignore. The boy adored Marcus. He drew little pictures with chalk, showing himself standing beside Marcus in armor. He laughed freely when Marcus pretended to tell Earth soldier stories as if they were legends. To Kale there was no war, only two protectors he loved. One night, trouble came. A group of human soldiers cornered Marcus in the mess hall. "You think you're better than us?" one sneered. "Playing guardian for the aliens? You're a disgrace to the uniform." Marcus stayed calm. "I'm doing what I think is right. That doesn't make me a traitor." Another soldier shoved him. "We risk our lives every day fighting them, and you sit around making friends." Marcus didn't raise his fists. He didn't want more conflict. "Stand down," he said firmly. But they didn't. The tension was broken only when Sergeant Lewis stepped in, his voice sharp. "Enough. Back to your posts." The soldiers left, but not before throwing glares. Lewis turned to Marcus with frustration. "You're making enemies here, Lieutenant. Watch yourself." Marcus nodded. He already knew. Meanwhile, on the Kiran side, Saraya faced her own confrontation. A young warrior approached her at the village square. "You bring shame," he spat. "You bow to a human who should be your enemy." Saraya's eyes narrowed. "He saved my son. That debt binds me." "Then your debt blinds you," the warrior hissed. "When the next battle comes, will you fight us or him?" The words cut deep. She had no answer. Despite the pressures, Marcus and Saraya continued to meet. Sometimes their conversations were light, about food, about music, about small things that reminded them both that life was more than war. Other times the talks grew heavier. One evening, Saraya asked quietly, "Do you ever wish you could leave it all behind? The war, the orders, the hate?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "Every day. But I can't walk away." "Not yet." She nodded. "I feel the same. I heal wounds, but I cannot heal the wound inside my people. They cling to hate." Their eyes met, And in that shared moment, they both understood. They were caught between two worlds belonging fully to neither. Kale, too, sensed the tension. One night, he looked at Marcus with serious eyes. "Will the humans hurt my mother because she visits you?" he asked. Marcus's chest tightened. He reached out and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No one's going to hurt her. Not while I'm here." Kale smiled faintly. "Then I'm not afraid." Soraya watched silently. She saw how her son trusted Marcus, how he felt safe with him, and in her heart she knew she trusted him too. The world outside, however, was not patient. War rarely allowed bonds to grow without challenge. One morning, alarms blared at the human base. Scouts reported movement. Raiders were gathering again, this time larger in number. They were preparing to strike near the valley, dangerously close to Soraya's village. Marcus felt a chill run through him. He knew what that meant. Soraya and Kale were in danger. His commander called a briefing. "We move at dawn. Raiders will attack the village. Our orders are to hold the line. Civilians are not priority. Enemy forces are." Marcus clenched his jaw. Not priority. But he knew those civilians. He knew Soraya. He knew Kale. After the meeting, he stood in the corridor, his heart pounding. He had chosen once to protect the child. Now he would have to choose again, between the orders of his people and the bond he had formed with those on the other side. That night, Soraya appeared at the base, escorted by her guards. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed fear. "The raiders come," she said urgently. "They will destroy everything. We cannot stop them alone." Marcus stepped forward before anyone else could answer. "Then we fight together." The room fell silent. Both humans and Kieran stared at him as if he had spoken madness. But Marcus meant every word. The tension between worlds had reached its peak. War was coming closer, and the fragile bond between Marcus and Soraya was about to be tested in fire. And though neither of them knew how it would end, both knew one truth. They were no longer enemies. They were allies, bound by a child's life and by something growing quietly, stubbornly between their hearts. The dawn was not peaceful. Dark smoke rose on the horizon, carried by a cold wind. The human scouts had not been wrong. The raiders were moving. Dozens of ships circled above the mountains like predators, and on the ground, armed bands marched toward the valley. Marcus Hale stood with his squad at the outpost gate, checking his rifle. His ribs still ached when he breathed too deep, but he ignored the pain. Orders were simple: hold the line, stop the raiders. But Marcus knew it would not be simple at all. Soraya stood near him, her robes traded for light armor, a healer's satchel strapped across her shoulder. Kale was safe in the village shelter, guarded by Soraya's kin. Still, Marcus saw the worry in her golden eyes. "You should stay back," Marcus said, pulling tight the strap on his weapon. "I cannot," Soraya answered firmly. "My people will be wounded. They will need me. And you may need me too." Marcus met her gaze. For a moment, words caught in his throat. He wanted to argue, to keep her safe. But he saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire he carried. He only nodded. "Then we stand together." When the raiders came, they came fast. Their weapons blazed, striking the human barricades. The ground shook as explosions lit the air. Shouts filled the valley, both human and Kieran voices rising in chaos. Marcus led his squad forward, his rifle barking as he returned fire. Raiders fell, but more poured through. They were ruthless, caring nothing for human or Kieran life. They fought for power, for plunder, for nothing but destruction. Beside him, Soraya moved swiftly. She carried no rifle, but her hands glowed with healing light. Where soldiers fell, she knelt, pulling them back, sealing wounds with crystal vials. She saved a human sergeant with a broken leg, then turned to a Kieran warrior bleeding from the chest. She did not ask which side they were on. She only saved them. Marcus covered her, firing at raiders who tried to break through. He shouted orders, steady and calm even as fire rained around them. "Hold the line. Protect the civilians. The battle was chaos, but Marcus felt something steady inside. He had fought many times, but this was different. He was not just fighting for orders. He was fighting for Saraya, for Kale, for people who trusted him. The raiders pushed harder. Explosions tore through the village walls. Marcus and Saraya were forced back step by step until they found themselves at the village square. Civilians ran for cover. Children cried. The smell of burning filled the air. A group of raiders broke through the barricade, weapons aimed at the fleeing families. Marcus saw them first. He didn't think. He ran forward, placing himself between the raiders and the civilians, his rifle blazing. He dropped two, but more came. One raider raised his blade, charging at Marcus. Marcus's rifle jammed. Pain flared as the blade cut across his arm. Before the raider could strike again, Saraya stepped forward, her staff glowing. She swung it, hard, striking the raider across the head. He fell with a hiss. Marcus blinked at her in surprise. Didn't know you could fight like that. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. I am a healer, not helpless. They stood back to back, Marcus firing, Saraya striking and pulling the wounded to safety. For the first time, humans and Kierans fought side by side, and for a moment, it felt as if the war itself had paused. Hours passed like minutes. The sun climbed, then dipped, and still the battle raged. Marcus's uniform was torn, blood staining his side. Saraya's hands shook from exhaustion, her healing supplies running low. Yet neither stopped. At one point, a blast struck near them, throwing them both to the ground. Dust filled the air. Marcus coughed, trying to rise. A raider loomed above him, weapon ready. Saraya cried out and threw herself forward, shoving Marcus aside. The weapon struck her shoulder, burning deep. She fell with a gasp. Saraya, Marcus shouted, fury rising in his chest. He grabbed a fallen blade and swung it with all his strength, cutting the raider down. Then he dropped to her side, pulling her into his arms. Her face was pale, sweat beading her brow. I am fine, she whispered, though the wound said otherwise. Don't you dare say fine, Marcus growled. He pressed a bandage against her wound, his hands shaking. You're not leaving me. Not now. Her eyes met his, pain in them, but also warmth. You care too much, human soldier. And you don't care enough about yourself, he muttered. She gave a weak laugh, even in pain. Perhaps that is why we fight well together. The battle reached its peak near sunset. The raiders, desperate, made one last push. They stormed, the square with all their strength roaring. Humans and Karens, shoulder to shoulder, raised their weapons and shields. Marcus stood at the front, rifle steady, breath ragged. Saraya stood beside him despite her wound, her staff glowing faintly. Together, Marcus said. Together, Saraya answered. The clash was brutal. Fire, smoke, and cries filled the air. Marcus fought like a man possessed, his rifle emptying until he swung it like a club. Saraya's healing light shone through the chaos, keeping soldiers alive who would have fallen. At last, when the sun dipped below the mountains, the raiders began to break. One by one, they fled into the shadows, their ships retreating. The village was scarred, but it still stood. Silence followed, heavy and aching. Bodies lay across the ground, both human and Karen. But there was also life. Civilians alive, children safe, warriors still breathing because Marcus and Saraya had stood together. When the battle ended, Marcus dropped to a stone bench, his chest heaving. His body ached, his wounds burned, but he was alive. Saraya sat beside him, her shoulder bandaged, her face pale but calm. Kale ran from the shelter, tears streaming, and threw himself into her arms. She hugged him tightly, then looked at Marcus. You kept your word, she said softly. Marcus shook his head. We kept it. Together. She studied him for a long moment. The firelight from burning ruins reflected in her golden eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, a bond stronger than any oath. Later that night, as the village tended to the wounded and buried their dead, human and Kieran leaders met. They spoke of strategy, of losses, of how unlikely their victory had been. Many pointed to Marcus and Soraya. Some praised them. Others whispered warnings. A human and a Kieran fighting side by side. One commander muttered, "It will cause unrest." "Or it will show what is possible," another replied. Marcus did not join the debate. He sat quietly by the fire, Kyle leaning against him, Soraya across from him. He was too tired to think of politics, too tired to worry about whispers. He only knew this. When the world had been at its worst, he and Soraya had chosen to stand together, and that choice had saved lives. As the night deepened, Soraya walked over to him. She knelt beside where he sat, her voice low. "You fought as if you carried the weight of two worlds," she said. Marcus gave a tired smile. "Maybe I do." Her hand brushed his arm, gentle. "You are not alone in that." For a moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire. Then Soraya stood, Kale's hand in hers. "Rest, Marcus Hale," she said softly. "Tomorrow we will see what comes." He watched her walk away, his chest heavy but warm. He knew the war was not over. He knew challenges awaited. But for the first time, he believed there might be a future where humans and Karens could stand together, not as enemies, but as something more. The dawn after the battle was quiet, almost peaceful. Smoke still lingered over the valley, but the fighting had ended. The village, though scarred, stood resilient, a testament to the courage of those who defended it. Marcus Hale walked among the ruins, helping survivors where he could. His ribs still ached and his uniform was torn, but he felt a strange lightness. They had survived. Soraya moved beside him, her arm around Kyle. The boy ran ahead to help distribute food to villagers, laughing despite the exhaustion in his small body. Watching him, Marcus felt a deep sense of pride, not in victory, but in protection, in the lives they had saved together. Yet even in the quiet, challenges loomed. Commanders on both sides were meeting, debating what should happen next. Marcus's actions were controversial. Some humans argued he had broken protocol, fraternized with the enemy, risked morale. Others praised him, calling him a symbol of courage and humanity. Soraya faced her own scrutiny. Karen elders whispered of her closeness to a human, warning that it could damage her reputation. Some of her people admired her courage, but many were skeptical, and Marcus knew that soon he would have to make a choice, not on the battlefield, but with his life. He found Soraya near the village fountain, Kyle at her side. Her golden eyes met his, and for a moment words were unnecessary. They had faced fire together. They had seen death, chaos, and fear, and yet they had also seen something stronger: trust. "You did well," she said softly. Marcus gave a small smile. "We did well. Couldn't have done it without you." Soraya shook her head. "You put yourself in danger over and over. You could have walked away." "I couldn't," he said simply. "Some things are bigger than orders, bigger than rules. Some things are worth standing for." She studied him carefully. "And now? What will you do? Return to your people who may not understand you? Or—" Marcus exhaled slowly, leaning against the fountain. The wind brushed against his face, carrying the scent of burned wood and flowers alike. He thought of the war, of the lives he had saved, of Kale and her, of the bond they had formed. "I don't know if my people will accept what I've done," he admitted. "They may call me a traitor. But I know this. I can't walk away from this, from you, from Kale. Not now." Soraya's lips parted slightly, her eyes softening. "Then the choice is clear. You must follow your heart, Marcus Hale. That is what defines courage, not orders or fear." Later that day, the human commanders called him to a council. Marcus stood tall, though his body still bore bruises and scars from the battle. "You endangered yourself," one officer said, voice tight with frustration. "You fraternized with the enemy. Orders are clear. Soldiers are to fight, not form bonds with aliens." Marcus met their gaze steadily. "I protected a child. I protected civilians. I stood for life, and yes, I spoke with Saraya. But everything I did was to save lives, not to betray humanity. I chose humanity, even in the middle of war. That is my order. The room was silent. Some officers scowled, others hesitated. Finally, Sergeant Lewis stepped forward. "Sir," he said firmly, "he saved countless lives today. Not just humans, but Kieran's too. If anything, he deserves commendation, not punishment." The tension remained, but Marcus didn't wait for judgment. His mind was elsewhere, on Saraya and Kale. Meanwhile, in the Kieran council chamber, Saraya faced her elders. The murmurs were loud. "You place yourself with a human?" one elder questioned. "Our people may not accept this." "I place myself with truth," Saraya replied firmly. "Marcus Hale saved my son. He stood against death for us. He is not the enemy. He is a man of courage, of honor. And that is worth more than fear or tradition." The elders were silent. Her words were strong, her conviction undeniable. For the first time, many realized that this human soldier, so different from the stories of war, had shown qualities worthy of respect. Days passed, and the valley slowly recovered. Marcus continued helping the villagers, working with both humans and Karens to rebuild homes and clear debris. Children laughed again, the wounded healed, and Kale, full of energy, stayed close to him, learning stories of Earth, helping wherever he could. At night, Marcus sat by the fire with Saraya. Silence stretched between them, comfortable and warm. "You've changed things," she said softly. Marcus looked at her. "No, you've changed things. You taught me what it means to care beyond lines drawn on maps." Her eyes softened. "And you have shown me that courage is not only in the battlefield, but in choices, in compassion, in life." He reached for her hand. For a moment the world fell away. The war, the judgment, the whispers. Only the fire. Kale's laughter in the distance and their hands touching remained. "Whatever comes next," Marcus said quietly, "we face it together." The Kieran people gradually came to see Marcus differently. He was no longer just a human soldier. He became a symbol of hope, of possibility. Some elders nodded to him as he passed. Children ran to him with bright smiles, laughing as he playfully lifted them onto his shoulders. The humans, too, began to respect him. His bravery, his choices, his compassion, it could not be ignored. Some continued to doubt, but others realized that Marcus's actions embodied what humanity could be at its best. And through it all, Saraya remained by his side. They did not need to speak every moment. Their bond was visible, stronger than words. Weeks later, as the valley fully recovered, Saraya came to Marcus with a small case in her hands. Inside were herbs, crystals, and small gifts of gratitude for his protection. But there was something else, a pendant, simple and glowing faintly. "This is for you," she said, "a token from my people. It symbolizes a bond of life, a promise." Marcus accepted it, his hands shaking slightly. "I don't deserve this." "You do," she replied softly. "You risked your life for mine and my son. That is more than any warrior has done in decades." He placed the pendant around his neck. The glow warmed his chest. Kale tugged at Marcus's hand. "Will you stay, Marcus, with us?" Marcus knelt down, meeting his eyes. "I will. Wherever you and your mother go, I go too. This is my choice." The boy laughed, jumping into his arms. Marcus held him close, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a joy unlike any he had known in battle. Saraya watched them, tears in her eyes. She stepped closer, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Then the path is clear. Together we can heal the wounds of war, build trust between our people, and protect what truly matters: life, courage, and compassion." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt a deep peace. The war was not over, and dangers would come again. But he had chosen a higher purpose, one that transcended orders, hatred, or fear. He had chosen humanity. Months later, the valley was transformed. Humans and Karens worked side by side, rebuilding homes, tending crops, and teaching children together. Marcus trained young soldiers not just in combat, but in protection, in mercy, in courage beyond the battlefield. Saraya taught healing and traditions, showing that life could thrive even after conflict. Kale ran between humans and Karens, a living bridge between two worlds. Marcus and Saraya often stood together, watching the children play. No words were needed. Their bond, forged in fire and tested in battle, had become a symbol of what was possible. One evening, as the sun set, Marcus turned to Saraya. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we face it together." Saraya smiled, her golden eyes glowing with warmth. "Yes, together. Always." The wind carried their words across the valley. Beyond it, the mountains stood tall, silent witnesses to courage, compassion, and the choices that define humanity. In that moment, Marcus knew. It was not the battles that made a man. It was the courage to stand for life, to protect the innocent, and to build bonds that could endure even the harshest of wars. And for the first time, he truly understood the meaning of being human.